The best thing about this trick is that it will never be corrected by the bookmakers, meaning that you will be able to use this trick for years and years to come. What's up, people? My name is James Blissett. I'm a professional gambler and founder of Lucrative MMA, which is my handicapping service where I help people make money from betting on MMA. And today I'm going to tell you the #1 way you can make money from sports betting. You can use this one trick to make more money than you ever have when you're betting on sports. The best thing about this trick is that it will never be corrected by the bookmakers, meaning that you will be able to use this trick for years and years to come to earn yourself more money. Stick with me through this video and I'm gonna explain to you exactly what the angle is and exactly how to use it to make money from the bookies. So, to put it simply, the angle that I'm talking about is fading the hype. Every single week in almost all sports, there is a team, a fighter, a person that gets hyped up by the betting public. This is not just specific to MMA, but we're gonna focus on MMA today because I am an MMA gambler. What we're gonna try to do is identify these fighters that are hyped up by the betting public unjustifiably and capitalize on that mistake. Something that you have to remember about the sports betting industry is that it is essentially gambler versus gambler. You may often hear the phrase us against the bookies. Now, in some way this is correct because we are all trying to make money from the bookies, and the bookies are the people that pay us out at the end of the day. But if you look a little bit deeper into the sports betting industry and the sports betting markets, it's gambler versus gambler, because the lines are adjusted depending on what the gamblers are doing, not what the bookmakers are doing. The bookmakers do set and adjust the lines, but the gamblers adjust the lines even more. If a lot of money comes in on one specific fighter, then the odds will change according to that money that's just came in. So, since it's gambler versus gambler, we need to find mistakes that we can capitalize on that are made by other gamblers. The #1 mistake I see made virtually every single week is betting on people that are hyped up. They get caught in the hype. You gotta understand that 95% of people gambling are doing it recreationally. They are not trying to make a living from it. They are not trying to make a consistent income from it like we are. Therefore, they get caught doing things that we're not gonna get caught doing. One of those things is getting caught up in the hype. So if we speak about MMA specifically, fighters get hyped up every single week. That may be because of their fighting style, that may be because of their personality, that may be that the powers that be want them to be hyped up by the media machine. Sometimes these people get hyped up justifiably. They really are that good. Shavkat Rakhmonov. Sometimes these fighters get hyped up unjustifiably. They are really not that good. Sage Northcutt. It is our job to find out when they are being hyped up unjustifiably, because we can profit off of that. There's a few examples I've had written down from the previous years in the MMA markets. When Kamaru Usman fought Jorge Masvidal for the welterweight championship in the UFC, he was a -200 favorite. The true line for that fight, which is just a gambling term for the correct line, was at least -400. But because of Jorge Masvidal's hype going into that fight, that affected the line. A lot of people bet on Jorge Masvidal purely because of the hype. Jorge Masvidal was coming into that fight off some massive wins, some highlight reel KOs, his flying knee over Ben Askren, which went viral all across the world, not only in MMA, but in pop culture. His knockout win over Darren Till, his beatdown of Nate Diaz. He was getting ad deals, media deals, commercials. He was in the spotlight going into that fight against Kamaru Usman. And so naturally, a lot of people got caught up in the hype and they bet on him to win. Kamaru Usman could have been had as a -200 favorite, which implies a win probability of 66%, which is ridiculous. Kamaru Usman's true win probability in that fight was at least 80%, potentially even higher. He dominated the fight for 5 rounds and won an easy decision. They actually had a rematch a year or two later, and Kamaru Usman actually knocked him out with one of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen in MMA. Just proving again that the -200 line on Usman in the first fight was way too underpriced. Another example of this was Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. I'm talking about the trilogy fight. They fought 3 times already, so I'm speaking about the 3rd fight. Conor McGregor had just fought Dustin Poirier about a year before that, maybe 9 months before that, and he had got beat down and knocked out in the 2nd round. Yet for some reason, he was a favorite going into that trilogy fight, and I bet on Dustin Poirier at an underdog price of plus 100, even money. I couldn't for the life of me understand why Conor McGregor was a favorite, seeing as he just got knocked out 6 months before. And it wasn't a flash knockout or an early knockout. They fought on the feet for 7-8 minutes. Dustin Poirier got the better of him and knocked him out. Poirier, up till that point, had been fighting consistently in the UFC for years and years and years, whereas McGregor had been in and out of the gym, getting into legal troubles, not fighting consistently in the UFC. There was no reason Conor McGregor should have been a favorite in that trilogy fight other than hype. Yeah, it was pretty predictable that Conor would have a decent first round, but it was even more predictable that after that, everything would go downhill for him and Dustin Poirier would start to take over. It didn't even need to get to the second round though, because Dustin Poirier started taking over even earlier. He started taking over about 3-4 minutes into that first round. Unfortunately, McGregor ended up breaking his leg, so Dustin Poirier was awarded the win. Although it may have not been a satisfactory win for Dustin Poirier, it was definitely a satisfactory win for my bankroll. A final example I'm going to give you is a very recent example. It's when Cedric Dumas faced off against Josh Fremd. Now, Cedric Dumas had a lot of hype going into this fight. I'm not really sure why, but I think it's mainly to do with his outside of the octagon criminal record, criminal history. Maybe because he got a big win on the Contender Series, an early win, I should say. Maybe because he got a lot of tattoos. He's got a cool look. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, he had a lot of hype going into that Josh Fremd fight. Now, a lot of people capitalized on that because they faded the hype on Cedric Dumas, who actually hit a -250 favorite at one point, and they bet on Josh Fremd. Josh Fremd went in there and got a dominant victory and ended up finishing the fight. Yet another example of hype in sports betting. Now, if you were able to identify the unjustifiable levels of hype on these fighters going into those fights, you would have made a lot of money. It's very important that you look for hype, you look for unjustifiable hype specifically, and you look to fade that hype when you're betting on MMA. Something else I want to quickly mention, which is very important as well, is that sometimes going into fights, there is justifiable hype. Someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov comes to mind. He's been a big favorite in all of his UFC matchups. But if I go back and take a look at them, he deserved to be a big favorite. And actually, some of his lines were probably underpriced. Even though he's a big favorite, like -200 against people like Carlston Harris, that probably was a discount on his line when I look back at it. He virtually covered his line in all of those fights. Even in the Jeff Neal fight, he was -400, -500. You go back and look at that fight, he doesn't look like a -400 or 500 favorite. But if you actually make the true line, the true odds for Shavkat against Jeff Neal, he probably is a -400, -500 favorite. So that's it for today. Make sure you capitalize on this mistake when you're betting on MMA and betting on sports in general, and you're gonna make a lot of money. The best thing about this mistake is that it will never end. There will always be hype on fighters, athletes, teams, people, whatever it is going into these sports betting contests, which means you can always look for this hype and fade it. Just be sure to decipher between justifiable hype and unjustifiable hype. That's it from me for today, and I'll see you in the next video.